Hey everybody, I'm Jason, and this is Jay's Project Garage. It's Sunday, it's about 8 o'clock. I worked all day yesterday, I mowed and worked on the 69 a little bit. I got the torque box in. It's not welded, but I got it in under the floor. It was a damn miracle, but I'll show you that here in just a few minutes. I think in today's episode, we're gonna keep working on the 69. I wanna get the torque box in, and I wanna start working on the floors. At least get the toe boards all in and welded. I'm going to take you through the back of the shop, and I'm going to show you some of the engines and stuff that I got sitting around and the plans. And then I've got some stuff coming up. One of them is the 66 Ranchero is coming back so I can tune on it. I got it running really well. The guy was super happy with it, but I wasn't happy with how high the idle was, and I couldn't get it to come down anymore because it needs more tweaking. So we're going to do that. But the other one is a surprise, and let's see if you can figure out what it is from this photo. That's coming up. If you know what it is, put it in the comments. I think some of you guys probably will. In fact, I guarantee it. Last weekend I got the long handrail put up in the house. I think maybe this afternoon I'm going to try to get the newel post and the rest of the handrail and stuff up. My wife won on the spindles. She talked me into the twisty ones we actually wound up getting them from Menards, but they're the same ones you get everywhere. And I figured out how to put them in without buying the little brackets. It's just going to be the spindles and the shoes. I'm just going to drill holes. I may show you guys how I mock all that stuff up. And then also, Friday night when I go home from work, I did a quick little project for the kids. They needed a milking stand for their goats. And since we have 3 different breeds, Nigerian dwarfs, Oberhasleys, and I don't know what the other one is. But the Oberhasleys and the other ones get really big compared to the dwarfs. So I had to make the thing like, I don't know, I'll show you. Make sure you like and subscribe because there's a lot of cool stuff coming on this channel. I got all kinds of stuff spinning around my head, and I've got a metric ton of engines and parts and stuff around here. Plus, we're still working on that Ford parts hoard, and this isn't just any Ford parts hoard. This is stuff from the heyday of the 5-liter movement from back in the early to late 90s. There is a ton of stuff. It's going to be really, really good, but it will probably allow me to do what I've been wanting to do with my 351, because I wanted to inject it, but injection intakes that'll fit in a Fox body without looking all, I mean, I've still got the truck intake, but those don't flow very well, and it would look stupid. The other ones are expensive, so I don't know. Come along, let's see what we get into. And I think we're going to start on the 69 first. It's in. I have to pull this part back out. The shape of it right here isn't exactly right, and I can't get it to come up anymore. I'll show you that here in just a second, how you can move a corner, and it'll make it fit a lot better. And then I'll show you again, once I get this back out, what it takes to get this top piece in. It was a chore. One thing that you always want to have around when you're doing sheet metal work is wood. You never want to take a hammer and just start smacking on sheet metal, because you'll wind up leaving dings and stuff in it. But if you're careful and you use wood, you won't hurt anything at all. You can beat the crap out of this, it doesn't matter, because nature always makes more. But you don't want to have to go back and fix dings in your sheet metal. This is the corner that isn't shaped right. I don't know if you guys can see that or not, but it doesn't fit the contour of the frame rail right there. So basically what I need to do is I need to move this corner down, and this needs to come in. So if you just take a hammer, and as thick as this stuff is, I don't even need to use a dolly, but if you hit it like this, and if you hit it hard enough, the edge will move. Watch. Okay, not only did it sharpen up, but that whole thing moved this way as I smacked it. Now I know this flange twisted a little bit, but that's no big deal because that's easy to push back once I get it in the car. This is where it wasn't fitting right. There's a bend in the frame rail right here, and that corner wasn't even in the right spot. So by beating on it like that and moving the flange this way, this thing literally slid right up in here, and I didn't have to hardly do any smacking at all with a block of wood and a hammer. And this is sitting almost exactly where I want. So now I can go start getting this clamped up, and I can get this top piece moved up where I need it. And then I'll show you guys, well, actually I'll just take you there now. But the reason placement is so critical is because of where the parking brake cable comes through. You need those holes to line up so that the cable can drop down. And then these are the 2 holes for the dimmer switch. There's actually holes in this top plate to allow the screws to go through the toe board. So we want to make sure all that stuff's in the right spot. And also, new cars have splash shields that cover this entire area inside the fender. These don't. The only place the splash shield goes is just right here. And basically all it's doing is just keeping mud and stuff from the tire from going back into the door jamb. There's nothing that protects any of this stuff from road grime or water or salt or any of that stuff. That's why I want everything fitting up tight so I can go back in and seam seal everything. The hole right here, that's one of the holes for the splash shield. So you want to make sure that lines up. And then there's another hole up here where a screw goes through to hold it. You want to make sure all that stuff's good so that you're not drilling holes and doing anything after you've painted the panels. You want all this stuff lined up and good before it goes to paint. Okay, so I went ahead and pulled the outer part off. I'm going to go ahead and start drilling holes and stuff in it, and I need to treat this rust before I start welding everything together. Here's the piece that was the pain to put in. And I don't know if you can tell by the shape of it, but you couldn't bring it in from the bottom, and you can't drop it in from the top because the apron's in the way. The only way to put it in was this way. This has a flange here that goes up, and it's got all this stuff down here that keeps you from being able to pitch it. So it was a trick to get this thing in here between the floor pan and the frame rail without bending anything up. Block of wood and a hammer for the win. Okay, now that I'm ready to start putting stuff together, one thing you have to keep in mind when you're doing sheet metal work, it doesn't matter if it's Mustangs or Camaros. I mean, I've done a bunch of 67 to 69 Camaro stuff. I'll throw a picture in here of one that I did. That was a 69 Camaro that I did, and the only original sheet metal left on it when I was done was the firewall. New rockers, new one-piece floor, all new rear floor, rear rails, roof, quarters, wheelhouses, I mean, you name it. That car was rough, and when I got it, it had already been cut apart, and it just had what was left of 2 frame rails sticking out of the back with quarters and everything cut off of it, so that was pretty tricky to put together, but it turned out great. And I think it's got a 540 big block Chevy in it now. The guy drives the shit out of it, and he's super happy. Now we're ready to start putting sheet metal on the car. There's a lot of places where you can't get a vice grips or you can't get a C-clamp or something. So I reach for, and actually, tech screws are great, but you could actually drill holes and use Clecos too, which I have and do occasionally, but tech screws are the easiest. These are great. I use them myself. Got no problems with anybody using them. But the one thing that I've seen 100 times is guys will use these to hold panels together and then they won't take them out. Take them out when you're done. I mean, there's nothing worse than crawling underneath the car and seeing tech screws sticking through all over the place. It looks like crap, number one. And number two, water can get in between the tech screw and the steel. And that's just another place for rust to start. So whenever you're done, just pull these back out, weld up the hole. Don't just seam seal it. That's kind of hokey too. Just weld it up. All right, one last thing I want to talk about before I start getting everything clamped up and holes drilled and start welding and all that crap. But Some of you guys may notice there's stitch welds. I'll go back and I'll do that on a car that's not a concours restoration. I'll plug weld it from the other side and I'll go back and stitch it. That makes it twice as strong. And the reason I do that, I don't know if you can see it or not, but the factory spot welds on this apron in the bottom are broken. There's 3 of them. There's 1 here and 2 at the bottom that have broken loose. So I gotta go in there and I gotta clean that up and re-weld them. But if you stitch it, you never have to worry about any of that stuff coming loose. Obviously, if it's a concours car, you don't want to do this. Judges are going to be all over your car and they're going to see it and they're going to ding you for it. But if it's something that you're planning on driving, it doesn't hurt and it keeps that problem from happening. I don't think most people realize how much chassis moves around and flexes when you're driving. That's why stuff like that happens. And you'll see cracks in aprons, you'll see cracks in floors, because the car, every time you hit a bump, yeah, the suspension's doing a lot, but the chassis is doing a lot too. It'll twist, and that's why they make subframe connectors. That's why it's a big no-no to just take floor pans and glue them in or pop rivet them in, because it's really taken away from the structure of the car. Any rust in a unibody car is kind of a big deal. Every single piece of sheet metal on this thing is important. You just need to keep that in mind. One of these days, I'll bring you guys, anybody's watched my videos, which is very few. I don't think the same person's probably ever come back and watched more than one. But I've been in the body business I was a body man for 20 years, and I've been in the business for like 23 or 24 years now. One of these days, I'll take you guys into the shop and I'll show you on the frame rack. Full-size truck, you guys think those things are pretty stout, right? Probably don't move around a whole lot. If you measure one with it sitting on the 4 tires and then you put it up in the clamps and measure it, the frame rails will move. I've seen up to a 1/2 inch where the whole truck will sag. It depends on the make. Toyotas are the worst. Fords are really good. You usually get 7-8 mils of movement out of those. GMs are usually good for 10-11 mils. Toyotas are 11, 12, 14 mils of flex. Not that that's a bad thing, but it's just kind of the way the frames are designed. But that's one thing to keep in mind. Unibody cars are the same way. Anything you do to these things is structural. Okay, I've got everything ground. I'm drilling holes and getting ready to start putting stuff together. One thing that's really super important is to make sure you use some kind of weld-through primer. You grind for a plug weld, and then you put the 2 panels together, there is no going back. There's no way to get in between those two and provide any kind of corrosion protection at all. And that's the place for rust to get started. This is about the only thing you got. Now I'll go back and I'll cavity wax, and cavity wax is outstanding, but it'll never be able to get completely in between 2 panels. It helps, and it's another line of defense, but the first line is weld-through primer. And when you're using this stuff, you need to make sure that you're not painting it. You're not trying to completely cover it. You just need one good coat. And it's the same way with like an etch primer or epoxy primer. I'll see guys putting 2 and 3 coats of epoxy primer on, and that stuff's expensive. You absolutely do not need to do that. 1 coat of epoxy primer and go right over the top with 2K. Same with etch primer, which I don't hardly ever use anymore. 1 coat of etch primer. It's perfectly fine if you can see through it. You just need to make sure you have 1 good coat of coverage and then go right over the top with 2K. Getting the torque box welded in. When I was showing this, when I was showing the other shots and you could see the frame rail and there was some porosity in one of the welds, a lot of guys were probably like, oh, this guy's a hack. He's leaving shitty welds in there. No, that weld was exactly where this one was going to be, and I knew that this weld would take care of all the porosity problems. But I'm getting all this stuff welded in, and while I'm doing that, you guys are going to go with Jason from yesterday and check out some of the engines in the back of the shop. This is a 76 Olds 350. Kind kind of sought after among Oldsmobile guys because this is the last year for the thick castings on the block. The cylinder heads suck. They're the mid-70s smogger stuff. I haven't even tried turning this thing. I got it with a bunch of other engines. No idea. I know nothing about it. So we can either put this up on a run stand and try to fire it, or we can tear it down and see what the inside looks like. And if you guys want me to source a set of earlier heads and we can build something out of this, I'm still working on getting that late 70s, early 80s Malibu. So we can put a whole slew of different engines in that thing if you guys want to try stuff out. Just let me know what you want to do with it. This is the infamous Ford 4-liter single overhead cam. This is the one that I pulled out of the Sport Track that I parted out that I talked about in another video. It's got broken timing chains. So I'm sure it's got bent valves and all kinds of stuff. But I want to tear this one down. I want to show you kind of the inherent problems with these things and what commonly goes wrong. And then if I just kept it around as a spare for my daughter's Ranger. We can do a full rebuild on it. We can just do a complete tear down and I'll show you the common issues, whatever. And then let me twist you guys around a little bit here. See if we can see it. That is the original 65 200 6-cylinder out of the 65. It was originally a 3-speed 6-cylinder car. I know absolutely nothing about it. So we can do a tear down on it and see what it looks like. And I can show you why these engines are so bulletproof because they were so far beyond overbuilt. I actually had thoughts about just putting this back in the car with a 3-speed or putting a T5 in it and just using it as my 25 mile to the gallon back and forth to work car. I mean, I don't know. Let me know what you guys want to do with that one. Okay, so here's some more of my junk. This is a 95 351 Windsor. It's a roller motor. Came out of a truck or a van. This is the one I'm planning on building for the 91 GT. I'm not going to go super crazy with it because I want to keep the T5 in the car. It's going to get a set of cylinder heads. I'd love to keep it injected. So I'm looking for an intake. We'll see if I can find one. This is the 60 over 351. That's pretty much cached. I mean, the crank's already cut 30-30. It's already 60 over. But I've got a set of 60 over 302 pistons. And I've got plenty of sets of the football truck marine rods for a 351. And we can get a 385 stroke crank and build a 393 out of this one. Put a set of cheap cylinder heads and just build it as cheap as we possibly can to see what can happen. This is one of my 350 roller blocks. This one's probably going to wind up in the 87 Trans Am. I think we're going to go with this and a set of Vortec heads that I've got on the bench. And it should do a whole lot better than his 50305. That you guys can just barely see is a fresh 30 over 302 roller block. That's probably the one that's gonna, it may be the one that winds up in the 65, or I've got that 289 crank, and I can show you guys how you can take a 2-piece rear main seal crank and put it in a 1-piece block. Super simple. I don't know. We'll see what happens with it. Okay, so it's only 10:30 in the morning, and somehow I've already managed to have a 20-minute video. That's talent. I'm going to keep working on the 69. I'm going to finish getting this torque box welded in, and then I will include that probably in next week's video. And then I'll start getting the toe boards cut and fit, and I'll show you how to reshape those. I'll make sure I get video, and we'll put it in with next week's. Really like to get the floor pans put in this thing, because then I think I'm going to do a truck bed liner on the whole bottom, and probably on the inside on the floors. We're actually making headway. Once I get that part done, then we can start putting the car together. The engine transmission's going in the car, all the brake lines, the new brakes, new suspension, new everything. All that's going to be done before the car heads to paint. Something else that I've been wanting to talk about is in another one of my videos, I talked about how my truck only got 11.7 miles to the gallon. Now I drive 33 miles each way to work every day at 50 something a gallon, that's painful. So about a month ago, I put new hub bearings and vacuum actuators in the front of my truck. That made a little bit of a difference. I think I got up to like 12. And then I raised the air pressure in the tires. I had it at 35 and now it's at 40. I think those tires are rated at 44 or something like that. So I've still got a little bit of room, but the ride's okay at 40. And I changed my driving habits. That's probably the most important part. So instead of the speed limit 70 on the highway that I take to work every day. So instead of doing 82 through Mexico, instead of doing 82 plus, I cut it down to 74, 75, something like that. And that made a big difference. It's 13.3 now. And I think I can probably do better, so I'm still working on it. It's Memorial Day weekend, so thank you very much to all the servicemen and women for your contributions to our country. It's race day, so I'm going to be listening to the Indy 500 on the radio, because in Indiana, that's what you do. Can't watch it on TV, at least not until they rebroadcast it tonight. And a lot of you guys are, well, you're in Indiana, why aren't you going to the Indy 500? Man, I've been to like 18 Indy 500s, I think. It's a lot of fun. It was great when I was younger. It's a huge party. It's the tradition. If you ever get the opportunity to go, you really need to. But I'm getting older, and I'm not a big fan of 350,000 people all crammed into a 2.5 mile oval. I mean, this getting there and back is a nightmare. I've been. My son's probably going to want to go at some point, so I will go. I'll go to another one, but I don't know. I'm old and particular and difficult, so I'm just gonna watch it on TV, stay home, and keep working. But speaking of working, you guys get out in the shop and work on your projects. You have a great day, and I will see you next week.